Welcome to this video where we're going to talk about my top 5 cameras that you could choose to use for live streaming. So let's get started. Live streaming has gained more and more popularity over the last several years with gamers and artists alike. There are a bunch of websites such as Twitch, Mixer, and YouTube Gaming, as well as a ton of others, and this just comes down to personal preference. One thing that's common with most streamers on these sites is they require a webcam. There are several streamers that just don't use a webcam. That's perfectly fine and legitimate too. But for those using a webcam, especially artists who might be doing practical sculptures or paintings, a camera is an essential tool to a live streamer's kit. In this video, we're talking about what I would consider my top 5 cameras for you to choose if you were going to do live streaming as a face cam or as an art cam or anything in between that you might do. The minimum criteria that I'm setting for this is each camera has to be at least 1080p doing 30 FPS. It has to provide a clean video signal, meaning no overlays, no record buttons or anything like that. And the top maximum budget just for the camera alone is under $1,500. Now, just to preface this, that none of the cameras that I'm suggesting today are $1,500. They are, even the top end one is significantly less than that. But to factor in things such as accessories you may need, including lenses or batteries and whatnot, which we'll talk about as well, that is to accommodate some of that. So your choice of camera is going to come down to several different things. It's what it's going to be used for, how versatile it needs to be, your budget, and also the size of your audience, because there's no point right now spending a huge chunk of money on these crazy upgrades. You can build towards them over time and find something that better suits your needs. So with that, let's just start with the cheapest option on this and the most accessible. The first camera on my list is the gold standard Logitech C920. This is a USB 1080p 30 FPS webcam that you can buy from almost any electronic store or even online, such as places like Amazon. The camera retails for under $100, and I've seen even recently it was going for as low as $50 US on Amazon.com. So in terms of your entry-level webcam or face cam solution, this is by far the best of where you should look to start out. If you look at something more like the C920, which promises 1080p 30 and 720p 60, I have heard from several different sources mixed results on the quality of the image that you're getting from that webcam. Also, dropping down to 720p just to get 60 FPS isn't really worth it, because it's essentially cropping down an already tiny lens just to gain the extra frame rate. So you're reducing the quality to increase the frame rate, which overall you don't really need 60 FPS for a face cam. It's really not worth it. That's why this isn't an option that I'm suggesting today, because the additional cost to just gain that 60 FPS is not worth the loss in resolution. And likewise, Logitech offer the Brio, which is a 4K 30 FPS and 1080p 60 option, but that is by far the worst option that is out there right now, based on several sources of friends as well as online reviews. The UI isn't as good as the C920. You have less control over the settings of the camera, and I've heard very bad things about the actual quality of the image that you're getting from this sensor. So that is why they are not on the list of recommended webcams. You're better off sticking with something like a C920, which is a tried and true product that you can use now for a very reasonable price and get really good results considering that price as well. And let me just reiterate here, as it is the case with all of these cameras, better lighting will serve you a lot better than an upgraded camera. So please take any of these suggestions with a grain of salt, in that you should look at building up your lighting kit and your audio kit, as I've said previously. Build those things up first before you look at paying for these higher end solutions. You should be getting the best out of what you have right now, and if you're starting with a $50 webcam, if you've maxed out the quality and the production value potential out of that, only then should you be looking at getting a more expensive camera. So the remaining cameras on this list require a couple things. They will require a capture card to carry the HDMI signal. They all do at least 1080p 60. They all require a lens. One comes with a lens as a fixed option, but if you want to have interchangeable lenses, it does have that as an available option too. And for the next 3 of the 4 that I'm going to suggest to you, they will require what's called a dummy battery to allow you to run it off AC power and plug it into the wall versus running off battery power. So keep that in mind. That part is very cheap and easy to get hold of, but you will still have to do that, and that's something that I had to find out myself because there wasn't that much information about that. So the first suggestion of the next line of cameras is the Canon SL2. And this isn't the cheapest one that I'm suggesting, but most people, I would say, if they are familiar with a brand, they are familiar with some kind of Canon camera, such as a DSLR like a T2i or a T3i or a 60D or a 5D Mark II or any of those. You generally will be more familiar with Canon. And some people might even already own a Canon camera and might already own some Canon lenses, which you can then use if you go with this option. If you don't have any, you can actually buy a kit of this camera with a lens for around $600 US, which I know is a lot of money because you then have to get the capture card on top, as you will with all of the remaining suggestions. But the quality over something like the webcam is huge. Again, it's about the quality of the HD, not just the number of pixels, or that this has 1080p and this has 4K. If the quality and the source of that isn't great, then you're going to struggle to get the best image that you can. So the Canon SL2 does 1080p 60 FPS video over HDMI. So using something like the Camlink or the HD60S or an Ava Media or a Magewell or any of the other capture card options, you will get a smooth, clean 1080p 60 FPS at super high quality. Again, go look at videos of the quality that you can see. Elgato's YouTube channel does actually do video reviews of some cameras that work with the capture cards. So again, whether you use Elgato or not, it's really good to see what the quality of those images look like before you make a purchase. Always educate yourself on these things. Next on the list is the Panasonic G7. This is the cheapest of this range of cameras that we're talking about today because they offer a bundle where it has a fixed lens on it for $500 US. It is allowing you to step into the realm of 4K, doing 4K 30 FPS, and it also does 1080p 60. If you want to have advantage of the 4K though, you will have to buy a 4K capture card. However, generally if you use that option and use a 1080p capture card, the signal will go through and it will downscale the image to a 1080p source, which gives you a cleaner image if that's what you're after. But if you want the FPS, then you can put it into 1080p mode and you'll still get a fantastic quality image from that. They offer a version with a fixed lens, which is a zoom, and they also allow you to buy the camera as body only, meaning it's just the camera, no lens. You have to buy your own accessories. So if you want to do things like photography, you want to do things beyond just live streaming or maybe vlogging, you have that option to buy the camera without any lenses that you can put your own on. And the benefit of this is if you own things like Canon lenses, you can buy adapters and adapt those lenses to this camera and use them like normal. My next suggestion is probably a little bit more biased because it's the camera I use, which is the Panasonic GH4. You could also use the GH5, which I'm filming this on. However, I do feel that's overkill, and the GH5 is, at the time of this video, about $2,000 US. So it is severely out of the budget of most people doing either YouTube videos and live streaming as well. An alternative that I may suggest for the GH4 is the Sony A6300 or 6500. They sit around the same price. I know some people that use them too, and the image quality is fantastic. If you decide that you want to film additional things as well, the Sonys are really good for low light night video work, so keep that in mind as well. But the GH4 falls in the range of about $1,000. Now this again only offers 4K 30 FPS and 1080p 60. So you're probably thinking, well, why would I pay double for this camera when there is no fixed lens option? The reason being is the quality of the sensor. The image is 4K 30 FPS again. With that 1080p, you can actually do all the way up to 96 FPS. It also, for local recording on the camera, on the SD cards, it will offer higher bitrate. It also generally will have more features in the menus that you can use. It's also probably better for stills photography versus a G7. I cannot confirm this because I haven't owned and used both cameras, but this would be one of those cameras where you're using it for multi-purpose. I would say a G7 is probably a good one for entry-level vlogging and YouTube videos, and also used as a live streaming camera. This one you would definitely be upgrading to. You would have a little bit more knowledge of video, like video work and video production, or you want to step up that quality and been doing this a while and it's kind of worth it to do that for you. So this is just one of those options where it's like, I'm using it because it's my old camera. I shot a bunch of like short films on it. I've shot a bunch of like YouTube videos on it. It's a fantastic, solid, all-around camera, but it works for my needs. It might not work for your needs. You might be better off with a G7. You might be better off with an SL2. You might even just be better off with the webcam. My final suggestion here is more of a suggestion of a brand rather than necessarily one specific camera, because they offer 3 cameras that would fall into the realm of what I would consider very usable. And this is the Blackmagic Pocket or Micro Cinema or Studio line that they offer on their website. I have owned a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera in the past. It's one of the cameras I first used as my live streaming camera when I was doing sculpture because of the high quality of the image. The one I used only did 1080p 30, but the quality of that 1080p was leaps and bounds ahead of what else was available at the time, and Blackmagic has come a long way since then, offering better results in terms of higher frame rates, higher resolutions, more dynamic range, and just better user experience. And the benefit of that is you're getting high-end tools at a reasonable price. So the options that I'm suggesting here are, firstly, the Micro Studio camera, which is about $1,300 US. It lets you do 4K 30 FPS and 1080p 60, but this is a broadcast standard camera. This is the camera you'll see companies such as Geek and Sundry, who do a lot of live streaming, use, as well as TV production studios. It is made to be put on a tripod and film in a studio environment, which is what live streaming typically is, unless you do things like IRL and going outside. It can also be used for vlogging and YouTube videos. It does have that quality there, but you're gonna need to kit these kind of cameras out if you're gonna do that. It is, as I said, designed to be, as the name suggests, in a studio. The other option they have is the Micro Cinema camera. This camera is $1,000, so $300 less than the other option that I've already told you about. It only does 1080p 60, but it has a wider dynamic range. It shoots in log format as well as the Rec 709, so it's made to go out and shoot films. That's what it's made to do. The footprint, the size of it is tiny. It's a micro 4/3 sensor and mount, which means that you can adapt any other camera's lenses to it. So you can use Canon, you can use Sony, you can use, if you wanted, cinema PL mount lenses. You can literally put any type of lens on this with the correct adapter. This is something that you may consider for live streaming, because 1080p 60 is more than adequate and will be for the next 5 years, because we haven't even standardized HD yet. We still have things coming out with 720p. Most live streaming channels that I see are streaming at 720p. So in that context, it's going to be a long time before technology and bit rates and all of that stuff reaches the 4K level. And by the time 2 to 3 years down the line, something new will be out, as always, that does that bigger and better than before. We already have 8K cameras, and like 8K TVs don't even exist. Lastly, I'm suggesting a camera that at the time of making this video isn't even out yet. The reason being is while there is no footage out there online of this camera, based on previous Blackmagic cameras, the quality that they produce, I would say this is one to keep your eye out on, which comes out in September, which is the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. It is $1,300, the same price as the Studio 4K camera, but it is tailored more towards cinema, which means you get a wider dynamic range, the option to film in log, which is just when you see an image and it looks super flat and washed out, it allows you to apply your own color correction if you make short films or music videos or any of that stuff. It just gives you more control over the image, essentially. This camera is coming out and provides you with 4K 60 FPS and 1080p 60. I think it goes all the way up to 120 FPS. But there's only like 1 or 2 capture cards that'll let you do that. But if you're doing video work, that 120 FPS lets you do really cool slow motion. So comparing this camera to the Studio camera, the Studio is probably more tailored to being in a fixed environment location like a studio, as the name suggests, for live streaming. The Pocket Cinema Camera 4K can be used like this as well, but it has much more benefit and flexibility to be used outside as well, for YouTube, for vlogging, for short films, as I keep kind of saying the same thing, but again, I'm just trying to point out where you might choose one over the other. If you're at that level of doing high production value live streaming, you'd probably be more tailored to the Studio camera. If you do live streaming and you do short films on the weekend, you probably lean more towards the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K when that comes out as well. So as all these options that I put out in front of you, it's really going to come down to your needs, your budget, what you are going to be using it for, what type of streamer that you are. Other than the webcam, which is basically just, I would say, only really suited as a face cam and would need a lot of light to get the most out of it. When you step up into this other realm of $500 above cameras, then you really got to spend a little bit more time thinking about where you're going to use this. Do you need it? What applications are you going to do with it? Because the Blackmagic cameras are not photography cameras. You could technically do it with the 4K 60 Pocket Cinema camera because it like essentially records everything in raw video files, like raw still images, as a stills camera would, but it's not really designed for that. It's designed for video. The benefit of the Pocket Cam as well, I should say, is you don't need a dummy battery. It runs straight off the wall and comes with the cable, as does all the Blackmagic cameras, so you don't need to worry about a dummy battery to make this one work. And again, you need to factor in and consider the prices of a lens. You need to consider the prices of any accessories that you need. You need to factor in the price of the capture card. I think the Camlink typically sits around like $120 US. So you're gonna have to add that on the budget. If you add that onto something like the Blackmagic, which is $1,300, you're then getting closer to that $1,500 budget, plus throw on a lens as well, and you see why I kind of put that idea in place of using that as my cutoff point because of the additional costs that come with these higher end cameras. So let me know what you think. Let me know if this kind of thing helps you understand a little bit more of at least just what cameras are out there that could be used for live streaming if you're looking to step up your production value in that way. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button, hit subscribe if you want to see more content from me, hit the little bell that will notify you when the next video goes live. If you're on Twitter, it's at CamcorderKid. If you're on Twitch, it's twitch.tv/CamcorderKid. I stream 5 days a week. And if you're on Instagram, it's CamcorderKid87. See you in the next video.